Thank you, Larry. May God add his blessing to the reading of the scriptures this morning, and may the words from my mouth be just what we need to hear. A guy went to an auto auction, and they were selling cars to benefit a charity. Vehicles in this auction were classified as either running or no start. On the auction block, there was a no starter that had a shattered windshield, had 2 tires missing, had no front bumper, had a broken grill, and dings and dents all over the body. Before he started the bidding, the auctioneer announced that the car's year, make, and model, and then he read the comments from the owner of the car. The comments just said, "Please note, the radio doesn't work." Well, there was a lot more wrong with that car than a broken radio. Some people are kind of like that car. They're broken, and they don't know how it happened. They don't know how it got that way. It reminds me of the Lutheran pastor who always started his church service. The first thing he would say is, "The Lord be with you." And the people would respond, how? And also with you, right. But one Sunday morning, his mic wasn't working. And he got up there and he said, "There's something wrong with this microphone." And the people said, "And also with you." Well, we all know there's something wrong with all of us, some worse than others. In our reading, we see these words: sheep without a shepherd. That's how these crowds of people were described, as sheep. It says he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. We live in a wonderful world, not perfect by far. And each of us is, I hope, this morning, happy to be here, happy to be alive. I'm grateful this morning that my dear friend Jim is alive after what took place on Thursday evening. It could have easily gone a different way. But there's something sad and almost pathetic about human beings. We are proud, we're smart, we're advanced. When I think of the technology and the way things have changed in my lifetime, it amazes me. But also, in some ways, we are so vulnerable, so uncertain, so insecure. Think of what took place this week with the big computer mess up, stopped airplanes from flying and affected hospitals, their information systems, and banks, and various institutions and companies, and all because of it was all part of that technology thing. So the bad comes with the good. We as I said, we're so advanced, but yet in many ways we're just not always secure. Middle-aged people, older people, we look at the young kids and we see a 13-year-old, and I don't know about you, but I say I wouldn't want to be 13 again. All the struggles, all the intense feelings, all the peer pressure that goes on, it's difficult. We envy them because they're young, but not necessarily their situation. Probably, I think someday, we'll all sit around in heaven and we'll say the same thing about our days here on earth. We'll say, it was good. I had a good life, and I enjoyed it, and I loved my family, and I loved my church family and my friends and all of my people. And it was nice while it lasted, but we're here now, and I don't think I want to go back. The heartache of loving someone and losing them, fears about the future. We have to get old and die. We never seem to get where we want to be in life. We never seem to accomplish all that we would like to in this life. I'll use the words for myself. I never seem to get my act together as hard as I try. And we do the things that we know in our hearts are wrong, and we don't do the things that we know are right. The difficulty in life, difficulty in connecting with other people. All of these things, I think someday we'll reflect back when we're in heaven, and we'll say, it was great, but I wouldn't want to go back. I'm sure that God sees our condition and that he has great compassion on us. I think we probably do remind him at times of a sheep without a shepherd. Sheep are prone to wander. That was one of the lines in the song that we sang this morning. The shepherd has to be very watchful of the sheep, or they'll wander off and some will get lost and get themselves into some pretty serious trouble. I read recently about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Everybody familiar with the Dead Sea Scrolls? Yeah, the Dead Sea Scrolls were a large collection of manuscripts of, many of them are copies of the Old Testament books, which date all the way back to the 1st century. And these were, before they were discovered, the earliest Old Testament manuscripts could only be dated back to the 10th century. So these scrolls, when they were found, it was really a big deal. But guess how they were found? It's so interesting the way they were found. In the mid-1930s, there was a shepherd boy who was looking for a couple of lost sheep. And he was out there in a valley near the Dead Sea, and the valley had lots of caves. And he was throwing rocks into the caves so that if his sheep were in there, they would come out of the cave. Well, when he threw a rock into one of these caves, he heard a pot, a clay pot. He heard it smash. And so he went in there to check it out, and he found hundreds of these sealed pots with manuscripts that were very well preserved. They were sealed inside the pots. They became known as the Dead Sea Scrolls and were one of the biggest archaeological finds in a long, long time. And it happened just because sheep are prone to wander and they get lost. Of course, sheep are not the only creatures of God that tend to wander. Every day in America, 2,300 people every day in this country are reported missing. Some are displaced by disasters. Children are abducted by a non-custodial parent sometimes. An elderly man or woman might get confused and wander off, and we've seen that happen several times recently in the state of Illinois and in Iowa as well. Teenagers run away. Some people fake their own death. Others are abducted by criminals. Different things happen. There's a military category which is called missing in action. Other people lose themselves in other ways. Some choose the wrong friends. They take up risky habits like heroin or some other habit-forming substance. But some just seem to wander off, like sheep who lose track of the shepherd. Maybe they're looking for greener pastures, and many times they have no intention of returning home. May I suggest that God sees us sometimes as sheep without a shepherd? I think when that happens, it must sadden God to see us wandering with no sense of direction, no sense of purpose, no sense of hope. Sheep are prone to wander. Sheep are also quite fragile. They are defenseless. They have to be watched all the time. They need protection during the day. They need protection at night. Predators are always looking to kill them. Sheep are short-sighted. They can't see very far. They can only see a short distance ahead. One writer puts it like this, quote, "No matter how many times you bring wayward sheep back, they are prone to wander off again because they can't learn from their mistakes. That's important because sheep are defenseless and dependent. They don't have much of a bite, no claws, no horns, no fangs. And to make matters worse, sheep are actually top-heavy. Their legs are very spindly. This makes them slow. They have no camouflage. So when they're being chased by a wolf or some other predator, they're out of luck. Sheep are also susceptible to all kinds of diseases. They will eat too much if you let them. They're not smart enough to stop eating and they get sick. They are definitely not your king of the forest types. And finally, sheep are easily frightened. They're easily confused. It doesn't take much to scramble the simple mental yoke of a nervous sheep. They've even been known to plunge straight down a cliff, right over the edge in a panic, one following right after the other. Sheep are fragile and quite vulnerable, like many people." End quote. We hear and read much about sexual abuse, people who prey upon the vulnerable, like wolves prey upon sheep. Laura Davis, who writes about sexual abuse, tells a story from her childhood. She remembers one time when she was a child, there were contractors working at her house. There was one who tried to molest her, and so she went and she told her mother. Her mother became furious, and she went at that guy with a broom. And she started hitting him with that broom, and she didn't care where. And she ordered him out of her house, reported what was going on to his boss as well as to the police. He was fired on the spot. Laura said that for her, this was a defining moment in her life. You know why? First of all, I guess I want to say that it's a moment that sadly lots of kids do not have. They don't get that from their parents or their adults. But it was a significant moment in her life because her mother had protected her. She felt loved. She felt safe. She felt important because her mom protected her. Laura's mother was being a shepherd to her child when that happened. I wish every parent was forceful when dealing with a predator. God must get upset. God must get angry when anyone tries to harm one of his sheep, especially when it's a child. That's why God sent Jesus to be our shepherd. In John 10:14, he says, "I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and they know me." God not only looks upon us with compassion, but Jesus came to the world to be the shepherd of the sheep. In his book, A Turtle on the Fence Post, the writer tells of the night he spent on the Texas plains with a shepherd who was keeping 2,000 sheep. He said the shepherd started a fire. The sheepdogs were laying near the fire and relaxing as the stars filled the night sky, and it was a beautiful night. And then it happened. They heard the howls in the distance of the coyotes. The dogs weren't patrolling at that moment. They were relaxing by the fire. And so the coyotes seemed to know that. The shepherd tossed more logs on the fire, and when Emery, the writer, looked out at the sheep, He said he saw thousands of little lights, and he wrote these words, quote, "I realized that these were the reflections of the fire in the eyes of the sheep. In the midst of danger, they were not looking out into the darkness, but they were keeping their eyes set on their shepherd." In John 10:27, Jesus said, "My sheep hear me, and they know my voice, and they follow me." In our part of the world, we don't really understand what it means to be a shepherd. Shepherds here drive their sheep from behind the flock. They get behind them like they do cattle. And they use their dogs to bark at the sheep and to nip at the legs of the sheep to keep them moving. But it doesn't work that way in the East. They lead their sheep from the front. The shepherd goes first. The sheep know their shepherd. And wherever he or she goes, they follow. Author Neil Anderson tells about watching a shepherd lead his flock on a hillside outside Bethlehem when he was visiting the Holy Land. The shepherd sat on a rock while the sheep just grazed. After a while, he stood up, he said a few words to the sheep, and he walked away. The sheep followed him. He said it was fascinating. The words of Jesus in chapter 10 of John, he said, took on a whole new meaning. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. So often in our modern world, the noise of life quiets the shepherd's voice. But you know, the shepherd is still there. The shepherd still calls. He knows each of you by name. And he cares for you like there's no one else on the earth to care for. What a blessing to know that. Jesus told a parable in Luke 15 about a shepherd who had 100 sheep. Remember this story? And one of them wandered off. What does he do? What does he do? Yeah, he leaves the 99 sheep and he goes to look for that one who is missing. And then when he finds it, he puts it on his shoulders and he carries it home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me. I have found my lost sheep." Then Jesus says these words, "I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who do not." What we need to understand is that Jesus' love is at the same time universal. He loves the whole world, but it's also very individual. He loves me. He loves you. Very individual. The Good Shepherd loves all of his sheep, and at the same time, he loves each individual as if you were the only person in the world for him to love. The point is that we often wander from the flock, don't we? But we have a good shepherd. He's always looking to bring us back. He's always calling us back into the fold. The old hymn says, "Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for thy courts above." Feeling a little lost today? The Good Shepherd is here, ready to help you find your way, ready to bring you back to the fold. He wants to put you on his shoulders and take you to a safe place. Listen closely for that voice, and you will hear him calling your name. Amen.